Does anyone else remember that time that Britain decided to play skipping stones with dynamite during World War II? That's right, everyone. Today we'll be talking about the British bouncing bombs. Yes, I wasn't joking. The Brits during World War II literally made bombs that rolled out of the planes and bounced until they reached their target, sank, and went boom. You see, back in early World War II in 1939, the British were making a lot of their attacks via air raid. This means that they would fly over targets, drop bombs, and they would go boom. This went on through a majority of the war, but in 1942 there were 2 major dams that needed to be destroyed for the British to make a move. So they tried using their regular bombing strategy. That didn't work. They tried using torpedoes, but the Germans had installed torpedo nets. They tried using depth charges, but there were mines to blow those up, and they were all out of options. So this engineer guy named Barnes Wallis came in to the Royal Air Force, and he was like, hey, you've tried everything else. You've tried torpedoes, you've tried depth charges, you've tried air raiding. Nothing's worked, and these Nazis are getting pretty smart. So, here's a design for this fancy little ball that I have full of explosives. You skip it across the water like you play in stones, and it explodes. And the Royal Air Force was like, neat. How does it, when do we start? And he essentially was like, I'm ready when you are. And unfortunately, the name may not sound familiar because Barnes Wallis was stricken from a lot of the records because people didn't want some guy getting credited for having a good idea, because politics, I guess. So, everything happened, and essentially the blueprints got put into fruition. They had 4 different variants of the bombs, but only 3 of them actually made it to production, and even then 2 of them were the only ones that actually were live. See, one of them was their training module. They had Uplift, which was made for the dams, and Highball, which was made for their boats. The 3rd version that I mentioned that went to production was the inert training module, so they could figure out how to do the thing correctly before they sent them off into the field. Because the math to get this right was so complex that Barnes Wallis himself had to instruct the soldiers on how to drop it out of the plane. And it had to be such precisely angled that if it was like a degree off, it wouldn't work. So, it could go off prematurely. Anyway, so he trained them, and with due time, they had it down to a T. Get it? Because British T. Okay. So, bad jokes aside, the grunts finally figured it out, and now they can start doing their aerial tests with the inert bombs, and as you may know, more stuff went wrong. See, the plane they were originally planning to test with were the Vickers-Wellington bombers, but the planes weren't heavy enough to carry the payload, and so Wallace yet again steps in and he's like, hey, we need a new plane. So he suggests the RAF uses the Avro Lancaster, which did undergo slight modifications, but this gave birth to Britain's Lancaster B-3 Special, or Bomber Mark III Special variant, which was especially modeled to carry these bouncing bombs. And at this point in time, the bouncing bombs were basically a cylinder full of explosives surrounded in a soft metal sphere, and that's why they gained the nickname golf mines, which only lasted for a short while, because on one of the aerial tests, the ball broke off and left the cylinder bouncing until it hit its target, like planned. And after a few more tests, they got the same results, and they were like, wait a minute, why do we need the ball if it's just going to float off that way, and the bomb is just going to keep bouncing like normal? So Wallace then stepped in yet again, dang, this guy needs more credit, to come up with the conclusion of, hey, maybe we don't need this soft metal shell if it's just going to break off and float that way while the bomb goes that way. So this new design was essentially just using the cylinder, because that's all that really mattered. That's what housed the explosives, that's what had the timer, that's what activated the entire thing. And so they used it, and they realized it worked. And so Highball and Uplift at this point were scheduled to be scheduled for production to be completed later on, But uplift needed to be sped up, as the two dams were mentioned earlier were going to be at their fullest, which was the prime time to strike, by May 16th in 1943. And on this day, they took the Lancaster B-3 specials, and they delivered, the payload so precisely and devastating that it not only crippled those dams, both of them, but it possibly was the thing that helped to end World War II. Now, this victory obviously was without losses. See, in the aftermath, around 19 of the planes were left unaccounted for, and 53 of the 119 Royal Air Force members were found either dead or to be missing in action. As sad as this story is, it still quite possibly could be the thing that saved the Allies from defeat, and thanks to some random guy with a good idea. Also, that is the reason that some random guy with a good idea. The entire thing may not have been possible. So yeah. Also, guys, if this sounded almost like a Fat Electrician video, I did take a lot of inspiration from him. Nick, I love your content. Yeah. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed, please subscribe. I plan to do more of these in the future. Happy New Year, and hope you had a Merry Christmas. See ya.